founders, companies need to navigate the changing legal landscape, because with the advent of technology now, especially with AI, the issues are so different. The kind of penalties that we're looking at under the Data Protection Act go up to 250 crores. Murphy's Law, which says that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. Is another protective layer on children's data where, the requirement under the DPDP Act is of a parental consent.
Personal data is already spread across the public social media. If it's already there, how do you protect it? And where does the privacy comes into picture then?
I think, for every law student, for every young associate, the end goal is to become a partner or start your own thing. One last thing, I think, make good friends. At work, try to make friends, try to make connections. These are the people who will, go a long way with you.
So this is the line I came across written by my guest today. The internet remembers you better than you remember agreeing. And I have come to know that's not a legal disclaimer. That's a warning for every founder, CXO, and business that move faster and sign even faster. Ankita Sabharwal, welcome to Impossible Transition. Ankita has covered an amazing journey from a law student to partner and head of data privacy in a tier one IP law firm, Chadda and Chadda. Welcome, Ankita.
Thank you so much for having me, sir. This is extremely exciting to be a part of this podcast, which is initiated by you and Lead. Thank you so much.
And stay on the podcast till end to know what exactly that line means for you and your business. So, Ankita, let's start from the beginning itself. In your journey from a law graduate to today,
Yeah.
I'm sure there would have been moments when you felt really challenged, very difficult moment.
Yes.
Share one or two with us and how did you adapt it to that challenges?
To start with, I mean, we all go through several challenges in life. For me, the challenges rather were very personal from a very young age. I lost both my parents very early on in life, where, I lost my father when I was just in class fourth. And when I was just in my first year of law school, I also lost my mother to cancer. So back then, I didn't even know how would I pay the fee, my next year fee for the semester. But I think, God finds his own ways to help you and, to take you forward in life. And that's exactly what happened with me. I had one of my cousins, living abroad, who just started, supporting my education. And I think, that challenge really taught me a lot in life and matured me very early on, where I knew that, for me to do something in life, it has to be through my own sheer hard work and efforts, because I did not have that backing. So, yeah, I think as a law student, I was extremely uncertain, extremely scared about what the future holds. But today, 7 years down the lines, it's been 7 years since I graduated. And when I look back now, I believe that, I always had that angelic hand guiding me forward. And that's been, I think, with me since forever. After I graduated law school, I was obviously, extremely bright when it came to academics, because I was always very focused and I knew that, I mean, I had to top and, all of that. So, post my law school, I got an offer from a tier one IP law firm to join them in the capacity of a trainee associate, where my work involved going to court every day. I was doing IP litigation. So that 1 year with them really taught me, how to mature yourself in a corporate environment, because from a law school, suddenly moving to a corporate setup, things can get very overwhelming. But I think I learned a lot there. And from there on, of course, I knew that I was somebody who was highly interested in technology. And, this is something I wanted to do. And I think my journey sort of, then I started steering towards that. And now, 7 years later, I'm heading the data privacy practice in a tier one IP law firm. So I think, yeah, it's just life has its own ways of doing things.
Thank you for sharing that, Ankita. So, Ankita, from a lawyer in IP litigation, right, to today partner in a tier one firm, also about your work in data privacy. Uh, Was it really planned?
You always desire that. I think, for every law student, for every young associate, the end goal is to become a partner or start your own thing. These are the two journeys for law students. So, yeah, the desire was always there, the manifestation was always there. And you can't plan it because, it also has to do a lot with the opportunities that come to you, with the trust that people place in you. You may be extremely bright, but if the people around you don't trust you, then it's very difficult. For me, I think my current firm, Chadda and Chadda, I have to really give them a mention that very early on into my career, the kind of trust, the kind of vision that they placed in me. When I was just 3, 4 years into practice, I was already traveling around the world and, talking about the work that I do. So investing that kind of, money and effort and trust into a very young lawyer, it talks volumes about the firm, right? More than me. So I think it's an amalgamation of the people that you work with and who you are. So for me, I think one of the things that I've always taken with me in life is having very strong work ethics. If you think that you can constantly just keep juggling, between firms and not stabilize, and, if you're not very clear about what you want to do, then I think nothing can save you. So you need to have clarity. And I had that clarity from the very beginning that I don't want to be, just one in the crowd doing, things which probably I was not liking that much. So I wanted to carve a niche for myself.
So, Ankita, as your early journey as a litigation lawyer, what is one thing which came as a surprise and you're not ready for?
I think long working hours. I think for me, I was just fresh out of law school. So, I was expecting that now finally I'm earning those bucks. But I didn't have time to spend those. We were in office for very, very long hours. I think I wasn't expecting that because litigation was something, I never envisioned that I would be doing because I always thought that I'm going to be in the corporate and advisory side of things. But when this challenge came to me, I think I just took it in the right spirit. But yeah, long working hours were a huge challenge. And also, the unpredictability in court because you've prepared for the matter. You've spent like 7 days, day and night working on this matter. And suddenly, when you reach there, you start, things have completely changed, and what you were prepared with, that does not happen. So all your hard work, just goes down the drain for that day. So I used to get very disheartened. But over time, I think that really taught me a lot of patience, that not every day will be your day. There would be days when you would feel disheartened. It really matured me, taught me a lot of patience. And I'm grateful for that experience. As an attorney, when I look back, uh, litigation really taught me a lot of virtues, including patience, hard work, and also, always being like extremely heads on because you don't know, what the judge might ask you. So you need to be ready with everything. So I'm, even before a client meeting today, I'm over prepared. And that really helps me because I always think about what they may ask me, Murphy's Law, which says that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. So just try to work towards ensuring that whatever may go wrong, you're at least covered on that front.
Representing in different forums, talking about law, talking about technology, talking about business, and then you have been very focused on industries like the finance, the technology, impact, environmental impact of AI in EV, which itself is a very unique topic. And it's kind of a surprise for me also. I never thought a lawyer could be as, has all of these three, right? Along with law, technology, and business also. I mean,
Yeah,
I can still imagine two, but three is pretty unique, I guess.
yeah.
So, what is what's unique for these industry which keep you so much engaged in this?
So for me, I think the world's really changed now. How law was looked at conventionally 15 years ago, 20 years ago. the advent of technology has changed every profession. It's touched every profession, impacted every profession massively. So it's obviously impacted the legal profession also massively. Conventionally, lawyers were thought to just be in court, and in today's time, companies are pivoting, growing, moving so fast that the legal challenges have also really evolved. Earlier, companies were FMCG, they were into manufacturing. Yes, technology always existed, but the kind and the extent of technical evolution that we've seen in the last decade has been immense. So when I graduated, I always knew that I wanted to do something related to technology. So I started with intellectual property because that's the closest that I could find back then. Because, in 2019, obviously, the GDPR in Europe, which is the General Data Protection Regulation, it had just, it was passed in 2018. So a lot of Indian companies were complying with that. So during my work, at my first firm, I was able to touch upon those areas as well. So that was something which always excited me. While I was a litigation IP lawyer, but my work on data privacy was something I used to look forward to the most. So I knew that this is the space I want to go into. And as I started, dwelling more and more into that, I realized that I'm also somebody who's very good with the business side of things because I understand technology. So I was able to communicate with founders a lot better. My inclination towards tech led me to a lot of forums where, I would speak about the advent of technology and law coming together and how, founders, companies need to navigate the changing legal landscape. Because with the advent of technology now, especially with AI, the issues are so different how they were. We're looking at infringement by an AI model now. So these are the challenges that, come up more and more now. We're looking at copyright infringement. Earlier, the conventional copyright infringement was, oh, he stole my song or he stole my book. Now it's like, oh, but your AI model, it created an output which is infringing to my existing material. So who has the liability? Also, in today's time, when we're looking at companies being multi-jurisdictional. So you have a company which has trained its model maybe in India, it's hosting the model in Singapore, and the relevant audience is the United States of America. So the issues have become so multi-jurisdictional that I always knew that this was something I wanted to do. And it also happened very organically because, my firm that I work with, we're a tier one IP law firm. So obviously with IP, you work around a lot with patents and you come across a lot of tech companies. So work related to technology, AI started coming to me naturally and I was good at it. And when I started doing that, I realized that I was also very good at educating clients because sometimes what happens is clients are not aware that they need to do these compliances and they only come to us when the boat has already sailed. So I was able to do a lot of preemptive compliances for clients. And yeah, I think it just shaped up for me very organically. And in today's time, my work is completely related to data privacy because luckily last year India passed its own data protection law. So my work completely changed to now, companies complying with that. And it's obviously a very lucrative field of business. And I've been lucky that, I've been invited to speak, at these forums in London. I've been, I've spoken at the Chicago Bar Association. So for me, it's just been something which has come with the work.
How do you see what's happening when it comes to legal and data privacy and IP with relation to AI in India versus what's happening across the globe?
So I always view India as a very nascent jurisdiction when it comes to these issues. We've started, working towards it now. We're walking on that path, but we're at least 10 years behind most of these jurisdictions. Having said that, India is a very complex country. Things are not that easy here. We're not a country, which is just a very easy country to navigate legally also. It took us several years to pass the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. This is a journey of 8 years for an act to be passed. So that shows that, the intent was always there, but the roadblocks were too many for this to sort of happen. Um, Having said that, I will not say that, now we are behind. Now, with the act being passed, I think we're treading on that path. When it comes to AI issues, also, the Delhi High Court, especially on the IP side of AI, right? There has been a lot which has been happening, a lot of chatter in the last 2 years, which is a great sign. So, I will say India is nascent when you compare it to the European Union or the United States of America or Singapore. But having said that, I think we're also one of those countries which is going to really, enforce the act fast. So, now that the act is passed, we're looking at a very, very early enforcement. So yeah, that's been my vision. And having said that, across the globe, the issues will sort of be the same. What's happening in Europe will also happen in India, maybe 5 years later. So it's just a matter of the timeline. Otherwise, we're all going to be, discussing the same issues sooner or later. How we saw with IP, in India, a lot of IP issues which were discussed in the Europe long before came in later, but eventually did come in. So even on the AI, side of things, on the data protection side of things, these issues will come in. It's just a matter of timeline.
Sangeeta, do you think with the AI technology advancement, this gap between what's happening in India and what's happening outside will continue to shrink in the coming years?
Absolutely. I think technologically, we are far ahead than a lot of countries. The kind of work that India is doing, with companies like Sarvam AI, and there are several companies, in India which are doing some path-breaking work. So I'm not at all concerned about our technological capabilities. The only thing that concerns me as an attorney is that is legal moving fast enough to keep pace with the technological advancements, because technology is moving at an unprecedented rate. We're not competing with these countries. I think we're far ahead when it comes to technology. It's just that our legal probably needs to move faster. Things, with the European Union, right? I'll just give you a very small example. The GDPR was not the first data protection law in Europe. Europe has had a history of data protection laws. So we can't compare India to such a mature jurisdiction like the European Union. But having said that, we should definitely learn from countries like Singapore, which very timely enforce their data protection laws, and now they're at a very safe place. So I think India will have to move faster.
Ankita, you mentioned earlier about expanding role of a lawyer, not only in the courtroom, but working with businesses in preventive role also. Tell our audience more about it. What are those roles? How do you bring a value for the business?
Sure, sir. So, earlier lawyers were always seen as a hindrance to businesses. Founders and, business people always felt that legal is always hindering, their decisions. But I think now legal is seen as a very integral part of, like me, we're a part of a company from its very inception. So my work starts with once your company has been incorporated, in today's time, everyone is working on a distinctive innovation. So I start with looking at, your IP strategy, all of that. And then we move towards things like if there is a technology transfer which needs to be done, because in today's time, right, companies are getting merged. They're, one company is acquiring the other. So I come in if there is any technology transfer that needs to be done. Lead and my work obviously before the IP itself starts with, hey, can I do this? Firstly, is it possible to do it? This is the idea that I have. Are there any legal challenges to it? Like in today's time, let's take a very small example. I get a lot of queries from founders saying that this is the model that we've prepared and we're planning to train our model on this data. So is it possible? Is it a legal go ahead that we can, train our model using this data? And then we do our due diligence and we tell them whether, it's safe to train model on this data or not. And, what are the precautions that they should take. So work starts with a lot of opinions around that. Then we move to IP. Then we move to compliances, because in today's time, right, doing a business in India, you do require a lot of compliances. So let's talk about the digital personal data protection. If you're a company which is dealing with personal data, your compliance with the Digital Personal Data Protection Act is inevitable. You have to comply. So we come in on that front. Then several other issues. Sometimes, they'll give us a call and they'll say, hey, I'm looking at raising this round of funding. So can you do a due diligence for me? Can you prepare the relevant agreements? So for me, we provide end-to-end support to our clients. For me, specifically from a technological point of view, I come in whenever there is technology involved, I come in. Otherwise, we do have a corporate team which will look at all the corporate side of things, your agreements, incorporation, all of that. That's the work that I do. So, yes, coming to your question, that has the role of a lawyer changed? Absolutely. Because now lawyers are not just looked at people who will help you when you're in trouble. Lawyers are looked at people who will ensure that your business can grow safely and profitably without the risk of things going extremely bad. So we're seen as a partner to a business rather than a hindrance now.
So again, coming back to the DPDP, right? So few things for our audience to understand, because I think DPDP is going to touch all of us, right?
Yeah.
And we'll come to it. What exactly is the personal data? Is my phone number personal data? Is my date of birth personal data? Help us understand that.
So personal data, as per the Act, is any data which makes a person identifiable. Okay, so if today, I give you three things about myself, I don't name Ankita Sabharwal, but I say a 30-year-old lawyer working in Bangalore, heading the data privacy team for a tier one law firm. And maybe let me say that she has spoken at several forums, including this, that, etc. And give you one more distinction, right? You will be able to somehow shortlist who this person is. And then I give you one more category. Maybe I say her surname is Sabharwal. So you will be able to identify me, because how many such people would exist? So personal data is any data which makes you identifiable. So if you're able to identify a person using a certain set of data, it's personal data. It will include everything like your phone number, email, name, things like your address, your designation, anything which makes you identifiable constitutes personal data. So let's talk about how this is important for companies. Companies across the globe, every company is using personal data in some way or the other. How? Even if you say that, oh, my company, I am a complete manufacturing company and I don't collect any customer data, but you would still have your employees' data. That's personal data, right? So the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, to sum it up, right? It is a mandatory compliance for all companies. You may be a single proprietorship, you may be a multi-million dollar company. Your compliance to the act is the same. Everybody has to comply. I don't think there would be any company which is not liable under the act. So that's a little about the Digital Personal Data Protection Act. As we move forward, I can go into the depth of it. But yes, giving you a heads up that personal data doesn't have to be exactly Ankita Sabharwal, this is my phone number. No, it can be categories of data which make me identify.
That's interesting, because today if I put it as a prompt and give to any of the LLM model, they'll probably be able to get me the name, right? So and that brings very interesting thing, which I kind of did not realize. And whatever you spoke about, these are the public information, Ankita, right? I
Yeah.
can go to LinkedIn, I get all of it and more, right? So
Mm.
then, are we saying that my or anyone's personal data is already spread across the public social media? If it's already there, how do you protect it? And where does the privacy comes into picture then?
So that's a very, very interesting question. You're absolutely right. We all have a very, very strong digital footprint in today's time. Everything that we do is on the internet, right? Having said that, where does the obligation come in? The obligation comes in that if, you go on my LinkedIn, right, and you take out my information, Ankita Sabharwal, email, this and that, and you store it in your device or make an Excel out of it, then that personal data which existed on a public forum, now since you have captured it, it is your liability to protect my data. So all these companies, right, including, Meta, LinkedIn, they're already complying with the data protection laws. So if there is a breach from their end, things are already taken care, right? But this is more to do with if you are, capturing my data from a publicly available platform, then the liability to protect it is yours. And if you're doing that, you need to comply. Otherwise, if you don't comply, if a data breach happens, then you're just going to get a huge penalty from the Data Protection Board of India. Of course, things have already moved. Uh, when we talk about us giving our information on public platforms, that's voluntary. That's my wish. But you storing my data, that's not my wish. So you have to take my consent to do that. So all of that comes in as a requirement under the DPDP Act.
So even if I take someone's phone number, name from public repository and store it in my spreadsheet or whatever, then I'm responsible for data, even if it's a publicly available, Ankita.
Absolutely, sir. And honestly, you
Mm.
cannot do that without taking their consent. Just because I've made a LinkedIn profile, I have not given you the right to, take out my data and make an Excel out of it. If you're doing that, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act says that you need to take my consent to do that. And the liability to protect that data now becomes yours. So if a breach happens from your end, you cannot say, hey, well, this was on LinkedIn. If it was on LinkedIn, what is it doing on your device?
I was reading about that DPDP is making data protection not a tech team responsibility, but this board and the CXO responsibility, Ankit. Is that correct? Is that the severity of this act?
Absolutely, so because the kind of penalties that we're looking at under the Data Protection Act go up to 250 crores. These are the kind of penalties that we're looking at. So definitely, the will to comply has to come from the management. And as I'm working with founders and, companies day in, day out, I know that, the intent is always from the management. The pressure is from the management to comply as soon as possible, because nobody, apart from the financial risk, there is also a lot of reputational risk involved in non-compliance. So nobody wants to do that. You've seen companies come and go. If a company is not compliant, you might be $1 million company. The law will take seconds before destroying. So everybody wants to comply, and you're absolutely right. We're seeing this decision coming from CXOs and founders more and more, because the cost of compliance is too low as compared to the cost of non-compliance.
And what does it mean for a solopreneur?
Hmm.
Ankita, the DPDP Act,
Yes.
what does it mean for him? And I think in today's world, I think everyone stores some data.
Yeah.
Any entrepreneur would be storing some data. So what does it mean for him? How does he kind of, deal with it?
Hmm. So, you may be a solopreneur, or you may be having a team, or you may be having a team of 1 million people. You have to comply with the act irrespective. Your extent of compliance will differ. If I'm looking at, a Wipro or Infosys or an Infosys, their extent of compliance will be much lesser as compared to, a company which is probably just a two-member company, because how much volume of data would that company be collecting? Irrespective of how big or small your company is, you will have to comply. So your extent and cost of compliance will change. If we're looking at a two-member company, the kind of cost of compliance will be very low. If we're looking at a bigger company, the cost of compliance will be higher, because the volume of data increases, and you may be a one member company, but you may be collecting volumes of data in today's time. That's possible. You have so many crawlers, it's possible to just collect more and more data. Then, things change. So for solopreneurs, I won't look at it differently. Treat yourself as any other business. Yeah, and you have to comply. That's how I look at it.
I think you made a valid point. WhatsApp is a classic case when it was bought a few years back, 18 billion. They only had 20 members. I think, yes, it's not about being a solopreneur, but what kind of data you have and what you're
Yeah,
planning to do with it. Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
Yes.
and I was reading that DPDP has made it very clear the data of the children has to be treated in a different way, Ankita. Would you like to share something about that?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, there is another protective layer on children's data where, the requirement under the DPDP Act is of a parental consent. So if you're a company which is dealing with children's data, you have to seek parental consent before, collecting children's data, processing children's data, storing children's data. So that's a requirement under the DPDP Act. Now, how the parental consent can be achieved, there are several technologies like tokenization through which that can be done. You will have to devise your own way. But you need to keep recorded parental consent. You need to record parental consent while if you intend to process children's data. So if you're a company which is dealing with children's data, then just a heads up that there is another protective layer on that. And the definition of a child is anyone below 18 years of age is considered to be a child in India. It varies in different jurisdictions. In some jurisdictions, it's 13, 16, but India has kept the definition of a minor as anyone below 18.
Let's now get to specific industries you work with. Finance, EV, tech, and also the gaming. Now,
Yeah.
I could see the underlying thread is the data, a lot of data for all of them. And in the background of DPDP, would you have some specific messages for each of these industry?
Yes, I will definitely say that if you're in an industry which is heavily reliant on personal data, let's talk about a service industry, right? For service industries, data reliance is a lot higher because you have to deal with things every day. So my suggestion would be that, start complying early on because compliance takes very long. It can take about 6 months for you to achieve compliance and don't wait for it last minute. For the gaming industry, you already have challenges when it comes to gaming laws in India. And we've seen that, recently there were, prohibition on games involving money, etc., etc. So I think there are already several challenges that you need to overcome. So don't wait for it last minute. For finance, it's a very critical data that you're dealing with. So be very, very sure that your compliance is top notch because if financial data is leaked, the impact can be very, very high. Me, losing my name to a data breach versus me losing my credit card details to a data breach, right? The impact is extremely high. So, take this seriously. You may be a very small company, you may just be in credit advisory, but your compliance has to be extremely top. So, for every industry, I would say start looking at this compliance very, very seriously. Otherwise, post the 2027 May deadline, you will be struggling. You won't find people who will be able to help you in a very efficient way, and then the costs get higher because when you're coming to lawyers last minute, then lawyers also charge a lot higher, and that's just something which happens. So just giving you a heads up on that start looking at it. The cost of compliance is not very high. So do this as soon as possible. Do this.
EV, what are the
Yeah.
data privacy nuances in there, Ankita?
Now with connected vehicles, the kind of data which the automobile industry collects, it's unprecedented. It's unprecedented. I work with some of the top automobile companies in the world. When you're driving your car, right? You move your car and go to a Starbucks. Your vehicle knows that as well, right? Now, my choices, my lifestyle, everything my vehicle knows. So, automobile companies are collecting a lot of personal data through the connected space. EV companies, your batteries are connected in today's time, right? So, that's also collecting a lot of personal data. So, of course, having said that, I think automobile companies, at least the reputed ones, they have already started their compliances, and we're looking at them at the last stage of compliance. But if you're a company which has not done that, please take it seriously. You don't know, machines talk faster than humans. You don't know how much data is being collected. So it's better. We're already in May of 2026. We have 1 year from now. We're already now almost in May. So we have 1 year from now. If you're a huge company, it's already late. So start now. I will not say start soon, start now.
Yeah. And what about the small companies? What about startups? And the most of the startup founders I meet, they are either having the AI already in their solutioning or they're planning to for it, right? And many of these would be working with automobile EV also. How do they take care of it? Is it necessary for them to engage a lawyer, or is there something they can do on their own? Do you have some offering maybe to help these early stage startup founders?
Yeah, absolutely. So, to begin with, a lot of these startups are working with these huge companies as their service providers. So they become data processors under the act, right? A
Yeah.
data processor is an entity which is processing data on behalf of the data fiduciary. So for them to even work with these companies, right, it's going to be a mandatory requirement for them to be compliant under the act, because the law says that any breach from the data processor also holds liability on the data fiduciary. So these companies won't want to work with non-compliant vendors and partners at all. So if you want to continue working with big companies, compliance under this act is absolutely mandatory. We're seeing now, even investors, when before investing into a company, their question is that, oh, have you already complied with the DPDP? So even if you're planning on picking up your next round of investment, please start complying. Now, when it comes to what you can do, right? Obviously, you need a lawyer. A lawyer will tell you what you need to do in terms of your agreements, your policies, having, any cross-border data transfer that you may be working with, putting things into your system. What we do when we work with startup founders is that we, offer things at a very, very competitive rate, a very low pricing. And then we look at auditing them. We say that, this much is enough to start with. This is enough. You don't have to spend too much. We'll come back to it 1 year later. So, in 1 year, even you have understood how much you want to do and, how the company is growing, and then we audit it 1 year later. So the cost is extremely low for startups. Of course, there is a range of costs for us also. If you're working with, a multinational versus an Indian startup, the cost is going to absolutely vary. So don't worry, lawyers are not too expensive in India, and go for it. Take some cost quotes at least. Then you'll be able to understand that we're not looking at a 15 lakh, 20 lakh, compliance amount. It can be extremely low also, and for us especially because we have a huge team, we're able to provide our offerings at a very competitive.
So what do you have to say about, so we hear about an LLM platform bringing a new agent in a specific domain, and I'm sure there would be some in the legal also, right?
Hmm.
So what's your thought about it? I mean, it could be very tempting for someone like me, right? Not to go to a lawyer, go to a
Yeah.
agent on a LLM platform and just get some guidance from there. So what's your message about such use?
To be very honest, legal tech has grown exponentially. There is no denial about that, there are several platforms which offer you this service. But when we're talking about these huge compliances, right, you don't want to rely on LLMs. Okay, the LLM may tell you, these are the 10 things that you need to do. How will you make those? Are you going to make your agreements through GPT and, have it sent to a US client who's going to just scrutinize and destroy it completely? Companies are doing that. I will not deny, there are some companies which do that all the time, even their investment agreements they create through GPT. The moment an issue comes in and, you look back at that agreement, as an attorney, we're perplexed that what were you thinking? The clauses are so lopsided, they don't protect you. So I would always say that, look at agentic LLMs in other domains. Right now, in the legal domain, it's very nascent. So the data is still not as much, and it's just a huge risk. I never tell anybody to, rely on GPT if you're facing any medical issues. So legal issues are as important and as dangerous. So my suggestion would be that, now lawyers also charge you less. There are no two ways about that, because legal tech enables increasing our efficiency, our speed also. But you need that human intervention, because chat GPT or Gemini will tell you to do 30 things which are not required. So so go to a lawyer, it's better. And you save on money later, because if you're litigating later, you will end up spending millions of dollars later. We've seen that, companies. I'll give you a very small example. Reddit lost its trademark to a very small company called Redico in Singapore. Yeah, a company like Reddit losing to such a small company comes as a huge shock. But at that point in time, when Reddit was growing, they didn't think it was important to acquire rights in Singapore. And then you lose such an important jurisdiction. So legal always plays in later. Don't take it lightly. Do not think नहीं होगा कुछ. Murphy's law, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. We've seen companies reach a certain stage and then completely, getting obliterated by law.
You being recognized as rising advocate in technology and cyber law, legal excellence awards, young voice of leadership in law.
Yeah.
What is your message for the younger lawyers in this field to create that trust? I think not only for organization, for everyone in their ecosystem, right?
No, I'd like to say that when we're extremely young, right, we have that, hot blood where you want everything to work according to you. You want the work to challenge you every day and to excite you every day. But I always tell, even when I go to universities to give lectures, one thing that, work is work. Don't make work your life. Don't try to, people may say that, oh, your work should be so exciting that you should look forward to going to work every day. I would say look forward to going to work every day, irrespective of whether you're finding it exciting or not. There would be days, when it's absolutely monotonous and you're just doing the same thing over and over again. You're just doing the same drafts. But trust me, once you master that skill, right, that's when you're untouchable. So just, stop thinking that every day will be just something exciting and something new. It's not there in any profession. I mean, I work with startup founders and I work with the CEOs of the biggest MNCs. Even their work is not exciting every day. So don't jump the gun, have stability from the very beginning. And I always feel that, today's generation, how we were 7 years ago, they know a lot more than us. When I talk to interns, they just have a lot of clarity and they just know what they want to do, which is great. But I also feel that, sometimes it's also trusting the experience that your senior has, right? So just also give them that kind of, benefit of doubt that they know a little more than you. So you may be great, but for me, my seniors have guided me the most in life. Like, I have had some amazing seniors who've navigated things for me, and I've placed my trust in them. And when I say stability, I don't mean that, just stick around doing something that you
Mm.
absolutely, you have to have some kind of commitment to an organization. Only then the organization will reciprocate. It won't be overnight. You will have to build trust wherever you go. And one more thing which I felt which lacks in today's generation is because, with all these AI tools, things are just easier. Earlier, we would take hours to do a research assignment, and now, whenever I'm giving research assignments to interns, I feel like, the turnaround time is exceptionally high. So it's great that you're using assistive tools, but for legal, you have to treat yourself like doctors, because the client is placing a lot of trust in you, and your wrong call can cost them millions. So I think use your brain, stop trusting AI tools blindly, and start doing a little more hard work, because I feel in today's time, maybe it's just something I feel, but hard work is looked upon as maybe a sign of weakness. It should be smart work. I feel it should be an amalgamation of both hard work and smart work. Nobody's asking you to burn, like, the night lamp and work 20 hours a day. Even if you're working 8 hours a day, make those 8 hours fruitful for yourself, for the organization that you're working with, and for your clients. And one last thing, I think, make good friends. At work, try to make friends, try to make connections. These are the people who will, go a long way with you. For me, the friends that I made very early on, those are the people who've ended up like opening their own companies, and, they give us so much work. You never know who can actually help you in life. So keep your friendships very strong. These would be things that I feel would be helpful for law students.
So, Ankita, before we let you go, please elaborate what that sentence means for our audience and for their businesses.
Yes, sure. So the line that stayed with me is that the internet remembers you more than you remember agreeing. You can move on, but the internet does not. So in today's time, right, we're using the internet way too much. Our day starts with scrolling, our Instagram, and ends with probably, Googling something, being on emails, etc. So when I, wrote this line, and I'm not the original author of this line, but this line really stayed with me, because we don't know how much of our footprint we're leaving on the internet. It's very difficult to track how much of yourself and your identity has been left on the internet when you leave. You go onto a website, and you see a pop-up which says privacy notice, the more and you just say I accept. Is the cookie notice which says that this website is using cookies and trackers and crawlers to collect your data, and you just say I agree. We don't use our mind enough to say I don't agree, or I want to customize how much I'm giving. We just blindly go, I agree. And then later on, when you start getting notifications and push from that website, and then you start wondering, hey, but I never ordered anything from there. The moment you went on that website, you gave away too much than you had to. So as a data privacy lawyer, my suggestion to everybody, and this is from an individual point of view, please start taking your identity seriously. Your identity is not to be commercially exploited. Ankita needs to protect herself on the internet. So stop agreeing to useless cookies and trackers and crawlers, and stop putting your address on every random website. You don't need to do that. Start using internet safely, because we don't know the extent of its impact on us. So yes, so that would be something that I'd like to end with, that use the internet safely. I tell everybody that start using your browsers on incognito mode, start logging out from apps. Once you go into an app, you never log out. That app keeps tracking you everywhere you go, whatever you buy. You don't even know that, but that app is constantly tracking you. So be mindful of everything that you're doing online, because, like I said, you will move on, the internet does not.
And any message for the business for that line? What does it mean for any businesses, Ankita?
Yes, even for businesses, that line stays with you forever. As a business, you may be, looking at several platforms to purchase something. Maybe you're looking at platforms to make some sales, etc. But, as a business owner, end of the day, you're an individual. So stop leaving your footprint everywhere you go. Just by scrolling on a website, that website should not know everything about you, but it does, because you agreed to that cookie. So even for business owners, be more mindful, not just of your data, but also the customer data that you hold. Things that you never had consent for, do not store it, because that data is not an asset, it's a liability for you. The more and more data that you hold in India, I always say that India has a hoarding mentality. We hoard things, in our homes, like we hoard data. Our HR forms are way too exhaustive. They would probably want information of your third cousins. Why do you need that? Go back, check your processes, how much data you hoarding. And whatever data you don't require, declutter, because that data, if it's not generating any business in the last 1 year, it's a liability. So that would
Thank
be
you.
my message.
Thank you, Ankita. It was so great having you today for this podcast. Thank you
Thank
for taking out this time and being with us.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me, sir. Thank